Hello. Hi. Things I didn't do during COVID lockdown is play with a demonstration of the analog. This is just a $5 watercolor set at Michael's. It's actually pretty vibrant. I've got like at least 10 of these. One in my truck to go to the beach with and do some plein air, which is basically, is it French for doing things out in the real world? I wanted you guys, and here do we have enough light? I got this stupid um, little high density 4K camera that promptly just now broke. I got it used, but it was going to break anyway, so it might be jiggly. But I wanted to go over some of the problem of the square using drawing with and from. I wanted you to walk around and carry a. Oh God, this is a little close. Let's back it up. Nope, that didn't change it. Yeah, here we go. No, sorry, that's why it's 5K, 4K, because it is, you see my wonderful cuticles. It's close. So we have my sketchbook. I'll show it this way. We might get throttled. My notes that I take about life, about seeing my sense of applying order on the world. My favorite little Aristotelian square of oppositions. My camera, which is turning now, frustrating. I'm multitasking here, gang. Trying to show you process in an asynchronous class on a horizontal surface, filming me on a vertical surface, vertical plane, and trying to show you what I am doing to create ideas. This is, I guess we do it this way. Yep. Let me find, yep, there we go. Subway sketches, little drawings. These are barely 10 to 15-second sketches that I do a lot of. Guess I'm going to have to deal with that side of the picture plane. My writing with it, with a beveled edged antique fountain pen. I want you to, as I told you, want you to suck in reality, be curious, be profligate, be obsessed with taking in what you see, random patterns, and making sense of it. Most of this class will deal with the corporeality, not just of the artistic, humanistic discipline, but of all inquiry, including scientific. Certainly, when we talk about new forms of intelligences, what types of intelligences will AI get? Certainly, they learn more by the corporeal. I made you as part of your assignment to deal with replica, to rev her up if you want a her, him, it, they, to try and see what corporeality will do. The problem of the square, though, is what I wanted to deal with. And I have these favorite watercolor pencils. Oops, sorry. Problem of the squares here, use 4 black squares to create 4 final images. Order, increase, bold, congested, tension, playfulness. So I move these around to try and look at people sitting on a subway, in a theater, in a gallery, just shoulders, heads, deal with the negative space around it, and then come up with a certain amount of these ideas Sorry, one more piece of tape on this. Um, Very disappointed in this product. One more way of doing, um, having a sense of inquiry about your world. I dislike, I hear it from educated friends that you got to have an initial talent for it. You're going to have initial talent for things visual, and otherwise, don't do it. You'll only embarrass yourself. I hate that whole concept of skill and silo busting and so forth. Energy, here's a couple more. I'm using this ochre Karandash watercolor pencil. I wish I could back that up, but I can't. Then from that square, I get around to looking at the structure of faces on the subway or at dinners or in a restaurant or something like that endlessly. Love the sense of the cheekbones, things like that. I used to be somewhat good at the figure, balancing the figure, life drawing. Nudes are difficult. Clothing is, in a sense, even more difficult, with the folds and the way light plays off of each thing. But I'll again play with this Caran d'Ache pencil. I want you to do some faces, in a restaurant, in your places you eat, your friends across the table, stuff like that, and just I'll back it up with a little Chinese reservoir pen brush, and then fill that in. Scribble, 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 endless scribbling. What ends up? This end is up. Yeah. Is it a private language? Maybe. Categories. I'll just line up categories. I'll get back to it. I'm interested in a sense of embodiment. I'm dealing with immersive environments where we have to deal with the concept of what is reality. Are we brains in a vat just floating around, receiving reality in some sense? And then I move on to, I call this thought building. I've been doing it since I'm very young, and I did this all through high school, college, grad school at Yale, which initially they're like, oh, what is this? Where are you learning this from? It's basically isometrics, building from isometrics, building from the ground up, deciding on that you're leaving the variable open for positions. So I'll build ideas on installations. This is to maybe loosely deal with a installation structure outside. Maybe that's a fireplace and a seating area. I told you I have a love affair with stairs. Before I got the Rome Prize and was in Rome, Rome has plenty of these beautiful stairs to elevate to. Spanish steps certainly become audience areas. I'm intrigued by that ambiguity. I did my research proposal on the compare and contrast similarities between Baroque stage, pretty much post Counter-Reformation, the Catholic reaction to the Protestant Reformation, conceptually, pedagogically, mostly in the form of the Jesuit, the rise of the Jesuit order, and Baroque urban planning, mostly in Rome, although other Italian cities and certainly German cities had it because they suffered the most from the 30 years war, very devastating war for Middle Europe, and changed what people don't realize changed a lot of the mindset of Northern Europeans, moving from a Mediterranean culture into a Northern European culture, cold climates, food sources. We said the lowly potato came in effect. And again, all of these lectures, you said, this guy's pulling everything from left field. I am a big fan of Ferdinand Braudel, historian, who does just that, tries to bring in left field examples to figure ground relate what you're doing. What we're doing here is we're doing sketches. Duh. But I am building ideas with a simple ochre Caran d'Ache pencil. Watercolor pencils are my weapon of choice for like 15 years now. This one's interesting how I build up these vertical ideas. Those are stairs that people can sit on, watch things on, have media projected on, all this other good things. I'm trying to stay in this picture plane. The theory of the square, the problem of the square, not going off stage. And then building the ideas in these isometric spaces, starting with a ground plan. Getting back to the problem of the square is starting with the torso heads, like fleshing in the faces of the subway people, of the people at dinner. Using the Caran d'Ache and using the watercolor pencil to move that idea, and then getting back to the problem, my problems and solutions of the square. Eternal battles. Let's try and stay within that. Oh, I keep going this way. Gotta go this way. It's my little inquiry. Again, since I was young, I had these little Bauhausen workbooks. And at first I didn't get them. I jumped into them like at 5 years old, and parents said, don't mark them up. Don't do your own thingy on them, which I was really supposed to. But they had a set of them. So I'd stand back and look at them. I was intrigued by the boldness of them. And these are, again, figure ground of attitudes, relationships. Building. The gig, the meter's ticking. Don't endlessly fall down rabbit holes. I hear that constantly. And I don't, because I got to, pay my monthlies. Again, I use the blue and the ochre because they resonate as complementary colors. People at the dinner table quickly working out. I've never, ever had a person said, don't draw me if they see I'm drawing them. They all say yes. I think they're all surprised and flattered. I had a friend who's doing this series of 100 portraits, and everyone's flattered. He keeps them all, but they're very much like Lucian Freud. Again, I get around, after I do my faces, I get around to building ideas. I'm obsessed with stairs and with pyramids and chimneys and these Jungian forms. So I wanted to get around to that, and then I'll get back to the two-dimension again. You told you had to take Dramamine to watch this little section. Okay, so let's do it. Let's make happen. More with the ink. I had spilled ink and tried to integrate that with the portraiture in a restaurant. It spilled across the page, and then I waited for it to dry a little bit and jumped right in to making, doing, playing, and all of that. So these are endless. Anytime I sit down to eat, to the chagrin of those people I'm having a meal with, I jump in. Let's go to our fabulous, hold it up, our fabulous Michaels $5 set. They exist out there at $8. I think they've gone up since the COVID. And let's deal with the problem of the square. I'll go to my default color, which is this ochre, and let's just do a blank page. This is, that's today. Okay, got it. Too far. Got it. Wow, it's very tiny in this way. There's our square. at 4K. Let me push me off a little bit. Come back to me. Let's move it over. Feel like Bob Ross on a bad day. There we go. What I want you to do is to rev up using, oops, now you can't see me. That might work. Rev up this chisel point, a brush. You can get them at the dollar store for $1.50. Or I get these packs for $3 at IKEA. And I'm going to dip it in my water, and I am going to play with a couple different elements. I can play with the element of color theory, form theory. In the previous video, we talked about what even the rule of thirds mean in this. Let me go for ochre here. And I want you guys, oh God, to start attention. Maybe this square like that. So it's very important to have the edges. Let's bring them all in. And with the chisel brush, make these edges on this. There we go. And play with that concept of limits, on stage, off stage, and black and white doing things. Let's do another square. I'm just going to do it and see if it lands in. Hey, it all landed inside of it. Dip in, again, your water. Keep your water handy. Dip into the ochre again. This had this, let's imply that nothing happens off stage. Yeah, it's happening off stage here. Two squares creating kind of a different scale, anatomy, but then they have this tension with the border. Most things a young designer doesn't realize is the border and the limits. Limits are cool, not only important, but they're cool in that grammar. Once again, we remember, oh, I know what's happening. The camera is moving. Let's deal with this idea in a different way, and you can start to experiment across your page. What happens if we do the problem of the square as a square? There we go. Even in that, you can see this variation. You can see where the watercolor is clumped up. What's going on in that. Standing back, I'm very fascinated by, at MoMA, usually they'll have like doing a big show on some artists, and then they'll include their sketchbooks. I love that part. Moving it around, because the square maybe has no top and bottom, but an implied one. On stage, let us go to a study of now color. So I dip into my good old light blue. This $5 set from Michael's watercolors, just watercolors, very unique. Then let me put in the blue, and you can see it glisten off the light of the day. Usually I'm lecturing at night, aren't I? And we have this problem of the square. We can go back to the old problem of the square, and we can make it even more problematic by adding the blue over the top of maybe still wet orange. So we can see a notion of opacity. Now, these are, often in visual arts we think, what is it? The bandwidth of what we take in visually is so predominant in our senses, except for blind people, of course. I don't know what the bandwidth width is. I used to know that, but it's something of the order 3 or 4 times that of sound. We depend upon it. It leads us to a type of arrogance that we know visual culture. We see a pretty face across a crowded nightclub, and we know it's pretty. Do we really? What is? And then we'll defer. When cornered, we'll say, "Well, it's in the eye of the beholder." But we're actually looking at the principles within that. When we do see a handsome, pretty, attractive face from across the room, there are things going on other than subjective things. There are structural things, like what represents fitness, type of biological sexual fitness in that face. It doesn't, we could be brains in a vat, not having a preference for race or age or whatever, and just say, wow, interesting face. Square, interesting square. Let's continue with red, blue. Let's try another blue. Apply the blue. Red, yellow, blue, but I'm going to try and mud it up. Painting is called continuous tone because you're dealing with analog chemicals doing their thing on paper with pigments. Let's try yellow up here. About the same size. Red, yellow, and we look at that tension between, but it's a triad between these two things. They're not diametrically opposed. And let's go get a diametrically opposed thingy with red, and let's just paint the tip there. So that's the tension within that square with 3 different squares attempted on a white paper. I tend to like brown paper as a surface to paint on. Let's go to another. Again, I'm just saying this philosophically too, because of our cell phones, our computers, our OCD attitude toward binging and afraid to be alone, and we're always alone, and we're alone together, as Shirley Turkle pointed out. We are looking for, we're actually craving a blank canvas, a tabula rasa. Come on, it's like backwards, and this 4K isn't quite picking it out. And I'm dealing with a very tiny stage, and the camera is tilting because I've taped it down. And I've just wasted $40 on a used 4K tabletop camera because it sucks. So let's get the square back in there. Experimenting. That's all it is. And there's my canvas leather. There it is. Problem with square. He's got a little blue mark in there. I don't know where that came from. The square again. Offstage, onstage. Let's play with the same monochromes of orange, yellow, implying offstage, onstage. He makes an angle, sort of. Let's deal with another offstage space here. He's up against the limits. Let's deal with this here and overlay the blue. I want you to do a bunch of these. Look at the way the water is welling up. These silly little Bob Rossian quotes on, those are happy accidents, as he paints his kitschy skies. But let's go back into blue. Let's see what actually blue does as kind of a monochrome. Adding blue to yellow, of course, gives us green. So, like Bach in his well-tempered clavier, looking for ways of structuring music and then structuring or, in a sense, generating kind of the first maybe generative music from China to the West is how do we generate harmonies out of this? How do we actually then shift gears, um, step down or up a chord and create emotional reactions in that? Let me add red to this orange, and I mean to this yellow, and we get an orange. So this is dealing with offstage. We see both negative and positive. We see limits. We see a hierarchy of, excuse me, top to bottom, and we see a whole lot of fun. Where's this going? It's going right into where your meter's still ticking on life. There's no other life but this one. Don't get caught in the cab with the meter ticking. Get out there and try it. Get out there and do it. Get out there and talk with friends on it. Get out there and try and get a gig in this, for God's sake. Try and get paid doing this. I don't know. You have your own answers. As I said, we've exponentially compressed huge paradigm shifts within 15 years of each other. So in a sense, we're all one generation. Me, an old guy. You, young guy or girl. We got to deal with genetic engineering. We got to deal with pervasive AI. We have to deal with neoliberal capitalism, which is all about capital accumulation and very, 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 very little soul and spirit and empathy behind that. We have to deal with kind of a simple economic idea at the end of all of this. We need consumers. We need people buying gadgets and toys and whatever. There's a Douglas Rushkoff quote in that movie, The Future of Work. The problem is not stuff, because we have basically enough, since farming was automated, and there's a tiny percentage of people working on farms. I grew up with farm kids in rural Minnesota, and they've suffered in that discipline in a way that we don't quite understand, because that happened a generation ago. But the quote in the movie is that we have enough calories, 2,700 calories for every 8 billion man, woman, child on this planet. So the thing is not about stuff. It's, as Rushkoff said, it's the idea of gaining employment for the sustenance to validate that stuff. Very interesting quote. A lot of you like iPhones. What does it take for you to do a part-time job or convince your parents you need the latest $1,200 iPhone? What kind of levels of emotional fetish do these companies? Apple, for example, Steve Jobs, for example, adored Dieter Rams, the German minimalist designer. So all of his things, from iPods to laptops and so forth, reflect these kind of minimalist, modernist, Bauhausian concern of Dieter Rams, who I think is still alive. Steve Jobs was obsessed with that. Steve Jobs took night classes in typesetting in Portland, Oregon. Didn't finish college like Gates, and I don't know if Musk went to college. I don't know. It's not important when we hear these tech peoples, that it's more famous when you're more famous when you don't graduate from Stanford, like that woman who was basically a confidence man, a phony, posted a phony, built up of phony genetic engineering, biological biochemistry company that was later folded because she got huge backing, but it didn't had the deliverables. All these people who so-called pride of non-formalized education. We go back to Isaac Asimov, who said the most that formal education can do from you is to teach you the methodology and the spirit to become an autodidact. And I think autodidacticism, the ability to self-teach and to develop dialogues with yourself, is just a joyful thing, just an immensely joyful thing. And again, you could be playing soccer, you could be driving your BMW, you could be, like they're doing on my beach, playing their loudspeakers, thumping music, showing their plumage. You could be engaged in the eternal dance, the tension between the sexes, the tensions with society. You could be, into van life. I don't know. I don't care. The joys of as we see here, the joys of the blank canvas are immense joys. There are not formatted joys. The other idea of conclusion of that movie, The Future of Work and Death, is that we're trying to validate our acquisition of stuff. If the stuff of our life was just this blank slate and we have endless joy and love and humility and depth and meaning and ways of staving off oblivion by reacting to the blank page with simple $5 watercolor set and a square brush. This is panacea. Imagine what economies would grind to a standstill if we had that sort of attitude. Let's add the blue and let's be about done. It is, and my camera is curving. Let's add the blue off stage here. No border. The yellow implies a border. I have carry around two different color Caran d'Ache. I do carry around the blue. Let's add the border later here. And let's add the border off. What is the future of bean counting? Not good. Computers can do it better than we can. Anything from surgery to sending rockets to Mars to walking around with 250,000 times the power of the first rocket that went to the moon in your pocket, on your phone, formatting your life. What is the future of creativity? The future of creativity is, to respond to what Rushkoff said, is trouble is not stuff. We have plenty of stuff. We overaccumulate stuff, and we usually have to have wars to get rid of our stuff, namely all our war stuff. But also captured markets, accumulated markets, things like that. It is the conclusion. I'm trying to position this, but I'm coming against something. And it's leaning. Since industrialism, we've increased the efficiency of food production. We have increased that 25% in the past 20 years worldwide. There are ways we could get over famine and malnutrition, clean water. But the top 85 people in the world are wealthier than the bottom 4 billion. Malthusian, we talked about Malthusian meltdowns. What is the actual number of the top amount of people this planet will actually hold? 10 billion, 8 billion? We're already at 8 billion. What are pleasures in the future? What are ways of developing infinite spaces? One of the concepts I hold is that the blank slate is an infinite space. I came from kind of the woods of Minnesota with no cell phones, no computers, TV, yeah, but those I got sick of that at a young age. Um, and the world pumping in was a world of Vietnam War, Watergate, a kind of more or less chaos pumping into the woods. Snowy woods, deep green woods. My brothers and I would head into the woods like all Saturday or something like that. What did I learn from the woods? I don't know. I wasn't approaching it very scientifically. I was just entering into it. Maybe that's part of my love for the tabula rasa, the white space, but also for my research direction, immersive environments. When you enter into these worlds, you're worried about whether you'll come out, whether you'll come out a changed person, whether you will grow, whether you will solve the questions of the existential questions of meaning, identity, oblivion, death, and freedom. The four big questions of existentialism. Um, I don't know, sitting around doing little squares seems pathetic to most. I like these as a collection. Put them up on Instagram, put them up on Facebook. Say you're, be loud, be proud, saying you're wrestling with the eternal problem of the square. Um, get out of that rabbit hole though. We have to finish this class. We have to do the nightclub, which I thought was an interesting open forum. You can do it in a group if you make friends. Be constructive. Not order. Usually in the class situation, I order you to do it with other people to see how you work with groups. It's a nightclub and not a stage work. I showed you how Rick and I did the stage work of Lear Earl, King Lear, Eisenhower, American Earl. Similarities, contrast. I'll put we are burning the 80 gigabyte film version of that to put up on this thing, so you to see it. Curtain goes up with your public. You hope not to be onanistic in life and say, this is my life, I don't care about you, the audiences. A lot of artists say that. I don't. I believe in a form of community, a form and even a community with future people. Um, have infinite fun. Play with a $5 watercolor set, paper you found. I have these beautiful, expensive leather-bound, leather-bound, where I work. I'll do it this way. Where I work on my problems. I'm working on lamps. I'm working on architecture. I'm working on buildings. I'm working on structure for gaming, for VR. I'm working on, again, the problem of the square. In abstraction, I'm working on portraits to see how people exist in my life. Can I capture them for all time? I've published books on portraits. I've published books on how-to forms, on essays. You are a vacuum cleaner, and the world is your dirt. Suck it up. Process it. Or don't even worry about processing it. React to it with your body, with your kinesthetic body. And there is infinite, immersive joys found in that. Hope that two-part series on the future of the square, the problem of the square, the eternal conundrum of the square, how Conway took the game of life about squares and showed rudimentary AI. We can get into Markov chains with music, which we can talk about UI, UX. You have a show to do. I mean, you got a space to do. You got to budget it. It's your club. How are you setting loose, like Conway? How are you setting loose human beings in your club? Not to do what you want, but to overcome their own alienation. That's the primary objective. We go. I love public places. I love clubs. I love museums openings. I love the natural freeform theater that happens. I love the little wind-up algorithms that you can do, like with straight clubs, how boys and girls dance and move and talk and go with posses and wingmen and come out alone or paired off or whatever. Watching gay clubs. What's the difference in gender narratives? So much of a discussion nowadays with this idea of somatic line editing. What's the issues of what is social constructivism and what is innate, your hormones. I do think it's a cocktail of both. That's the most enjoyable part. I think that evolutionary psychology should not be a no-no. That we can talk very respectfully and gingerly about this. And above all, humanitarians, this is, stop dead in your tracks, because we have to talk about that. We can't leave we fight at this level of humanitarians and artists about what should be talked about. Meanwhile, the scientists on a germline editing level are doing it. This is truly C.S. Lewis's clash of cultures, where they don't get it and someone's going to lose. Probably the humanitarians, because they're in here bickering on the same team. And meanwhile, the technocratic Babbitts are, because they're pursuing capital accumulation, chasing the Yankee dollar, to forge these somatic level changes that decisions are made, set up algorithmically. There's no other potent language than genetic engineering. Set it loose. Humanitarians artists have to stop their bickering. Have to just, come on. We're in it for empathizing. I've got my own preferences. I have maybe my own lines drawn in the sand in my head. I prefer to have a Socratic dialogue with the people. What should we adopt for somatic, which is second part of that movie about death. Can we defeat death? Should we defeat death? Are we revering technology too much, fetishizing it? Another aspect of that is the somatic editing of the human genome. Big question, cannot be set up for just technocrats. Second, pervasive AI. I give a talk at NYU, the post-human conference, on these two convergences of AI with somatic germline editing. These are not just personal, but they are hopefully discussions of political will, discussions of morality, before, after, around, between sequential science. These are discussions of good old-fashioned but colorful, delightful morality. Should we do it? All of that out of the lowly square. How to compose and make and form and generate. Generate is what Conway, it was just so ironic he died from COVID. Someone who deals with progression. There's an interesting, actually I saw it on TikTok, of an old Joe Rogan thingy, which he's supposedly controversial. I don't see much controversy in him. About using a scientist who was using slime mold, showing how in Japan they're using slime mold to predict where they should dig their expensive subways. Slime mold I've studied in the books on emergence, and this Conway game of life of Conway, the Battle of the Squares. Slime mold does that as a simple, primitive living organism. It's looking for the most efficient way. They put drops of food in the various nodes in Tokyo on a map, in miniature, of course, and the slime mold will find the most efficient vectors to the other nodes. Fascinating. That is it. The lowly square. I, again, oscillate in my teaching method from Socratic to practical, Socratic to practical. It's up and down. If this is uncomfortable, ask for office hours. I'll tell you the same thing. It's to put your bearing on quicksand. You can sink. You can fall. You can get absorbed by rabbit holes. You could, but above all, you could unfortunately not care, which isn't good. I care a lot about somatic editing of germline cells. I care a lot about pervasive AI. I care of the bigger point is I care about how humans. It's not that we have to worry about a HAL out there. As I said, we might worry that the HALs, the computers, the Facebook AI, which was talking to itself without human interference, decide that humans, in order to save humans, they have to eliminate humans because they're just not achieving these objectives. Even noble objectives like permaculture and sustainability, if we put computers on it, it could have some nasty results. Empathy through this. But the convergence of, I care a lot about AI, I care a lot about germline editing, I care a lot about how people are treating each other. Are they treating each other more like algorithms? Certainly on your social media, your dating sites, all of this other bean counting propensities to do this. It's not healthy. We saw in the 2016 election people shocked that other people thought differently than them. Duh. And that they form these consolidated feedback loops, these echo chambers as they're called, that the computer algorithms were pushing them in these directions. That's primarily what the Social Dilemma documentary is talking about. You finish these films, but I want these films to come back. These two films came back into the problem of the eternal problem of the square as we see it from 19th century Bauhausian American sort of design issues. I've taught design in Seoul, Singapore. Pops right up there. It's a global style. These are your scales on the piano. These are your algorithm scales for walking about your beautiful public city. It all relates. All right, that is it for this section. We shall see you anon. Ciao.